Following the Second World War, Britain faced the task of rebuilding the countless bombed-out houses and city slums that had defined cities since the Victorian era. Their solution was high-rise cities in the sky, which housed families just fine, but had the unintended side effect of leaving residents with a sense of loneliness and isolation. Meanwhile, on the television, the children growing up in the post-war era saw a world of conflict and disarray, political turmoil and divisions over the future. What the public needed was reassurance and security in this new frontier of British life. Starting in the 1950s, the Central Office of Information, or COI, began producing public service films about a wide array of issues. The longer of these films would be shown in schools, and the shorter ones would be sent to television stations to play during ad breaks whenever they pleased. However, while the goal was originally to educate and reassure the public, specifically young people, some uptight, old-school bureaucrat in Whitehall probably took this to mean scare the living crap out of children and they'll be too scared to get into trouble. And so, with this distorted goal in mind, the gears of the COI were put into motion.
Fire can break out at any time. This Christmas, don't leave your children alone in the house.
Using camera and editing styles picked up from American horror and gangster films, the COI employed recently graduated film students who wanted to make horror movies to produce hundreds of these ad break fillers on a budget of several million per year. Film censorship guidelines were strict in the use of violence in movies, but because the programming was technically educational, these restrictions didn't apply. The shorts were always set in some kind of bleak industrial moor in the underdeveloped north of England, using child actors who a lot of the time didn't know what kind of film they were making. Inevitably, at least one child would die at the end of the film.
It's the perfect place for an accident.
Oh, look, there's someone in the water. Quick, use that big stick to get him out.
Sensible children. I have no power over them.
And all of them are like this. Very slow, very dry, lots of visual space and audio silence. Draws you in, and then suddenly, BAM! Murdered children. One of the most famous of these was 1979's film Apaches, a film about farm safety. A group of children play around a farm, and slowly, one by one, each of these children is killed in a horrific way by farm machinery. At the end, the viewer is silently presented with a list of all the children who died in farm-related accidents in the prior year. It seems quite ridiculous today to spend hundreds of thousands of pounds in taxpayer money to produce a 30-minute short film about not playing near a farm, but this was the 1970s where there were only 3 TV channels, there was no internet, and unless you wanted to listen to Grandad talk about killing 3 Germans at the Somme, you had to play outside. Another of these films is called The Finishing Line, which seems like it takes place in some sort of dystopian world where children being forced to run across railway tracks is a sport. Oh, sorry, that wasn't the right film. That was the replacement film they made, because The Finishing Line was so gruesome that even the government themselves admitted they went way too far with that one and banned the film from public showing for 20 years. Anyway, The Finishing Line ends with hundreds of murdered children being laid down on a railway line. But it wasn't just children who were the target of this onslaught of surreal horror. In the 1980s, amid fears of an AIDS crisis, the government produced a series of television spots for adults on how to avoid catching HIV. That one was a bit more surreal, but there's this one, voiced by none other than John Hurt, and this one's a bit more spooky.
It is a deadly disease and there is no known cure. The virus can be passed during sexual intercourse with an infected person. Anyone can get it. So protect yourself. And read this leaflet when it arrives.
And I'd be doing a dishonour not to mention Protect and Survive, which was the film intended to be played on television in the days leading up to an anticipated nuclear war. Originally top secret, the film was leaked to the BBC and shown to the public in 1980.
You are better off in your own home. Stay there.
There was just something grim about watching instructions on how to properly dispose of dead family members.
If anyone dies while you are kept in your fallout room, move the body to another room in the house. Label the body with name and address, and cover it as tightly as possible in polythene, paper, sheets or blankets.
And the music for these films as well, they were always these repetitive synth keyboard music. From a jump scare about firework safety.
Somewhere there are other children whose lives are going to be changed. Will one of them be your child?
To an unsettling ad about drink driving featuring a crying child.
How am I supposed to explain that you killed a little boy?
There was seemingly no end in sight to the British government's weird desire to terrify the public. Alas, all things must come to an end. In 2011, the Central Office for Information was shut down as part of wider budget cuts to government departments. At the time of its closure, the COI had a budget of over £500 million per year. Today, the UK government no longer produces general public information films, but private organisations and charities are still known to make them. In true British public information film tradition, they are still creepy as hell. But the horror isn't just limited to your television screens, oh no. The children's charity Bernardo's released this full-page ad campaign in newspapers in 2005, which the public found so disgusting that they lobbied regulators to ban the campaign entirely. And parodies of the era are still common in British media today. Artist Richard Littler has created the art project Scarfolk, where he produces disturbing posters and media satirising both today's politics and the world of the 1970s. He calls it the next logical step in the evolution of the public information films he saw in his youth. The 2002 series Look Around You parodies the outdated educational films shown in schools and on TVs in the 70s and 80s, which is sometimes humorous and sometimes terrifying.
This is known as the Helvetica scenario. Luckily, Helvetica is a very, very rare occurrence.
The influence of the public information era is just everywhere.
You're buying a used condom. After all, it was cheaper, and the man did say he'd washed it. But how do you know? Just think of where it's been. Even if you know the man, never buy a used condom.
The British Advisory Department presents B.A.D. Advice.
You're watching the British Emergency Broadcasting System. The estimated date is March or November 2013.
The critics call this hauntology, references to a bygone era made using aesthetics taken from the past rather than creating something new. This past may or may not have existed, but hauntology certainly makes you think it did. This is common in other retro-futuristic subgenres like vaporwave or atom punk. Whatever it is, the public information films of the post-war era are still watched and enjoyed today because they represent a lost future. Britain looked confidently ahead and was optimistic their best days were ahead of them, yet they were met with a world of danger, paranoia, and foreign enemies. And they're creepy because successive governments decided that simply scaring the public was easier than educating them properly and responsibly. So what's the take-home message? I don't know, they're creepy, and that's why.